Hi and welcome back, you beautiful nerds, to another edition of a video on this channel. As you can see, the format of this video is a bit different because I started this week thinking that I was making a video about bras and boobs, and yet here we are, making something completely different. This is abnormal for me because I am a bitch who is in a deep and meaningful relationship with her Google Calendars and Google Drives. I don't like swift changes in schedules because, I'm a baby, I don't. But it dawned on me last night that Thursday and Friday marks the 9-year anniversary of my sexual assault. And as much as it makes me sick to my stomach to think about, I think it's important that we talk about it. Not the assault itself, because goddamn son, we covered that in the BuzzFeed video that I made with Chantel a couple years ago. But I want to talk about what life looks like after, because I don't think that topic gets covered enough. And to quote my therapist, what we resist persists. So buckle up, my good bitches. Here we go. Hi internet friends, thank you for being here. I just want to say off the bat that we're going to be talking about sexual assault and the after effects of sexual assault in this video, so trigger warning, please protect yourself. Take a sec, check in with yourself. See where you're at. Is this something you want to digest right now? Protect yourself. Protect yourself, my good bitch. And I also just want to give you a little extra permission to click out of this video at any point where you're watching it and you're like, oh, not today. That's fine too. So my Capricorn brain wants to format this into some kind of listicle, like the 7 things you learn, because I'm striving for some organization to this video. I can't really do that because what we're talking about today is non-linear. So this is gonna turn into a talking head video, and I'm sorry, I really don't like starring in talking head videos. I'm not a preacher. You can't even trust me to be funny for 8 to 12 minutes straight, so enough prefaces. Here we go. According to RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, every 73 seconds, an American is assaulted. For those of us who lived through the Me Too moment online and was really paying attention to that phenomenon, you remember the feelings of shock and maybe relief, whatever fun bag of triggering feelings came up for you when we saw at least I saw my ecosystem echoing around me, like me too, me too, me too. Like I said in the intro, I realized that my anniversary, that's not really a good word for what I'm talking about, my rape birthday. Ugh, I'm sorry. That was awful. I'm still grappling, obviously, with it. I'm still trying to make jokes. My sexual assault is 9 years old today when this video drops. It happened at night in between the April 8th and 9th, so it's today. All I really remember is that it happened on Easter Sunday. And for that reason, I fucking hate Easter. Whoo, boy howdy, I hate it. It is the most pointless holiday. Yeah, let's just start here. Maybe we'll put a number on this, Derek. Maybe we'll be like, this is a realization. Ding, number 1. One of my realizations is I fucking hate Easter. I'm just still trying to put some organization behind these thoughts, Derek. Forgive me. This can be number 1, or not, I don't know yet. I no longer like Easter, it seems like a showy holiday. Jesus already left, he ain't here anymore. Can we take these ridiculous hats off? These feelings of me vehemently disliking Easter are no doubt left over from me walking to my car on Easter morning 2012, hearing church bells ringing and feeling so incredibly disconnected from my body and feeling so out of touch with the world. Easter for me is a reminder that sometimes our personal reality becomes so out of step with the reality of our surroundings. It makes me really sad. Easter makes me sad. But see right there? Easter is another stupid little side effect that we don't talk about. We talk about the act, the rape, the assault itself, but there are so many little jagged things that happen to you after. Sometimes I think we get so caught up talking about the Brock Turners of the world and their fate and how they should be punished that we turn our attention away from the victim altogether. It's like after we cry out and pull attention to this very scary and very shameful thing, the mob takes them away and we are just left in the dark trying to figure out what do we do next. So yeah, that's why I'm making this video. I'm making it in hopes that you look at my past 9 years of life and think, oh my God, she was a fucking mess. I'm gonna be okay. Maybe we'll organize this thing by years. What do you think about that, Derek? I feel like that's better, right? Okay, I'm over the listicle thing now. We're gonna organize this by chunks of years of time. Mess! So let's rewind the clock back to 2012, 2014. What kind of decisions was a baby 23 to 25-year-old Devin making? Not good ones, I assure you. If you had to put your money on something, it would be the not good ones. After my assault, I tried and failed to date the dude who did it. Let's call him George. That is a fake name, by the way, and it doesn't really matter because he's like an extra in this story. I mention this fact because I used to deny that what happened to me was rape because we briefly dated afterwards. I was really shocked when I found out that this is kind of a semi-normal response to this kind of trauma. I honestly thought that I was the only one. At that time, I was very poor. I was working as an assistant, a nanny, a hostess, and oh yeah, I was trying to be an actress and not doing a very good job at it. I never had any days off, and I really didn't even have any time for any hobbies. Directly after, I noticed that I started stealing from my roommates. It was a compulsive behavior that I never had before. Like, sure, you borrow clothes from your best friend, but there's usually some kind of conversation where it's like, oh my God, that looks so good on you. You should take it. That was not the case for me. In my mind at the time, I was always like running out the door, and I would be like, oh my God, I just need X. I would sneak into their bedrooms and I'd take like a lipstick or like their jacket or something stupid. And because I didn't think that I was actually doing anything wrong, I know it sounds crazy now, but at the time I had like logicalized to myself that I really wasn't doing anything wrong, that my need superseded their need for their own shit, you know? It's crazy talk, but it's what I did. I would be so bold as to wear that item of clothing or that lipstick in front of them. I would be like, I done nothing wrong. We're friends. You would want me to have this stuff if I needed it, right? And to the credit of the young women that I lived with, we sat down many times and had some very honest conversations about it, but I couldn't stop. By the way, I can point to that behavior and say that my boundaries had been severely crossed. So I started mirroring that behavior in my everyday life with the people I love. By the way, my therapist and I worked together to identify this as an example of how rape slowly started to corrode my life. There were other obvious symptoms of PTSD that I was grappling with at the time, like panic attacks and night terrors. But then there were also some examples that weren't so clear. My decision making, for an example, was pretty risky. I started sleeping with everyone and anything that would have me. I wanted to party all the time, so I pushed the people around me to go out with me. Could that be connected to my assault? Sure. I mean, maybe. It could also be that I was a 24-year-old living in a big city who had a bunch of jobs and just wanted to blow off some steam. It was around that time that I used to go to bars and flirt my ass off and steal drinks off of bar tops, which I do not recommend. Please don't start doing that. And I ended up getting roofied twice. Thankfully, I had some very good friends who brought me home both times and slept on my floor. And it was because of this risky behavior that I became a real burden to my friends. Now, I'm convinced that years 19 to 25 are your stupid years, and you learn a lot of lessons the hard way. Like, for example, I got my car towed and my heart broken like every other month. I could point to my assault and be like, that's the reason why I was so dumb. Or I could have just been a dumb kid. You know, mixed bag. It's just a lot more nuanced than that, you know? Another nuanced thing that I did was I fell in love with somebody very hard and very fast. Someone and I had like this instant connection, and after about a month of seriously dating, he moved across the country to be with me. I don't care what you say, that was dumb. That was stupid on our part. But Devin, what about true love? I hear you, and true love waits. Not only is that a classic Radiohead song that you should really check out, but it's also an adage you should live by. This person had serious issues with himself, and to no one's surprise, this relationship went south really fast. My roommates hated him, my parents really disliked him. He was the kind of person who would just want me all to himself, which was really intoxicating to me at the time because I felt like I was failing, like all the time. I thought I was failing with my friendships, failing as a daughter, failing as an actress, failing as an assistant, literally failing all the time. So to have someone just want me around them 24/7 was like, oh my God, I'm not failing. Now, I don't really want to spend much time talking about him because I'm sure he's changed, or at least I hope he's changed for the better as a person. And our relationship was 100% consensual. By that, I mean he was completely emotionally unregulated as a person, but then again, so was I. I bring him up because at the time he became the center of my universe, the source of my energy. And that was again another mistake. You see, I didn't know it at the time, but my assault completely rewired how I took in information about the world. When my boundary was violently crossed on Easter Sunday 2012, I learned that people just take. We just take from each other. So then I learned to take from the world at the time and to move fast so no one could take from you. So I was taking my roommate's stuff. Even in my ex relationship, we moved fast. We were very jealous of each other. We were codependent, just take. But in the midst of all this mess, a lot of good things happened too. Yes, after my assault, things about me were irrevocably changed. However, you still have your positive traits too. On the outside, I was still Devin. I was still extroverted. I still had ideas flowing a mile a minute. I was still unafraid to talk to anybody, and I was still curious, endlessly curious about the world. These traits are what I consider bedrock parts of my personality. And George, the guy who assaulted me, again, that's a fake name, by the way, George could never take that away from me. Not in one night. Now, every assault is different and everyone heals differently. But I choose to believe that victims are stronger than their Georges. And that while the Georges of the world may try to steal or snuff out your light, they ultimately can't, because that light is your soul. And I believe that souls transcend violence. But yes, and so in those 2 years, my soul was very much still at work. Other people may not have that experience. Other people may feel like they've been dampened or snuffed out, but I promise you, baby, I promise you that soul is still there. How I knew my soul was still there is I started producing. I made a web series. I made new friends. In 2013, my assistant position transitioned into more of an AP position, and I started reading and covering scripts, and I followed my boss to New York so I could see how she could conduct business in the film world. I discovered S Factor and then started pole dancing again for the first time in 2 years. I trained 3,600 hours to become a teacher, and then discovered this new joy of creating the space that allowed other women to feel safe enough to be overtly sexual and dance all sexy like. I modeled for extra cash. I became a stock photography model, which brings me endless joy today when people find my old pictures on the internet and make them into memes. I taught myself how to edit videos, and then I started sending stupid little videos that I made to my friends. I learned how to pitch my ideas in a professional way. And most importantly, I started CBT therapy with the same therapist that I have today. I started therapy because I felt like a mess. I even called that part of myself Messy Devin. And I initially recruited my therapist to help me keep Messy Devin at bay. Writing this script is hard, so I'm gonna take a nap with my nap buddies. Despite being 9 years out, I still get exhausted thinking about the choices I made back then. It gets really exhausting thinking about what could have been if I didn't drive to Venice that night. But it's around these times that I typically hear a little mew for food or rub on my ankles, and I snap too. You see, it was about 8 months into my relationship with Mars and Bones when Easter 2012 happened. They were still kittens getting used to humans, and quite frankly, I was still very much a human getting used to kittens. But something happened after Easter 2012 where I started depending on them more, and they started attaching themselves to me more. I know it may sound convenient or something I made up in my head, but I do believe animals read energy. And it was shortly after Easter 2012 where my cats really became my cats. They saw me through my messiest times, and they still meowed to sleep with me in bed every night, and that meant the most to me. They mean the most to me. Oh my God, if I talk about my cats anymore, I will cry. Big time, for sure. So let's move on to the next couple years. Let's say it's 2015. We're just gonna chunk it 2015 to 2019. We'll call these the BuzzFeed years. In 2015, my life changed in an instant. Seriously, I remember being at some dumb club on New Year's Eve, bringing in the year 2015 and thinking to myself, man, as soon as midnight hits, I just wanna go home. I wanna crawl in bed. I wanna get some good sleep because I wanna prepare for the rest of my life. Something in that year clicked in me where I wanted to make my mess make sense. I was still working 2 jobs at the time. I was teaching pole and working as an assistant producer. And I was also still living part of my life in New York. And yeah, enough was enough. I had traveled, I had run away, I was independent, I was buzzing all over, and I had had enough. I wanted new, I wanted movement in a different direction, I wanted different. Oh, and on January 8th, 2015, I met Patrick. Well, I didn't meet him on January 8th. I'd seen his ass at some parties before. We were both like always pretty drunk and also not on the lookout. But January 8th, 2015 was when our attention spans finally synced up. And that was the night we went on our first date. We drank whiskey and talked about what felt like everything under the sun that puzzled us. We closed out the bar. He took me back to his house. We watched a movie with his roommates. He drove me back to my car. I was still a little too shy to kiss me, but I wasn't. I pounced on him and it was perfect. Now at the time, I was hell-bent on moving to New York. That city gives me so much life. It inspires me. It energizes me. And I seem to connect with more people and more opportunities in New York than I did LA. I told Patrick that like a couple dates in, and his response was, okay. I left for New York in February of 2015, and before I left, I told him that I was gonna be dating other people in New York City, so he should be dating other people in Los Angeles, and he said, okay, but I won't. I only heard the okay part and didn't really process the but I won't part until I was on a plane going to New York City. He was the first person who didn't demand anything from me. He didn't try to take anything from me. He gave me space, so much space. I was like, who are you? But again, I was hell-bent on being in New York City. From February to August, I went back 3 times and spent a grand total of, I think, 12 weeks in New York City. I felt so independent and safe and happy, but I still really wanted to plant roots somewhere. I wanted a career. I wanted to finally build something. I felt like I hadn't gotten a chance to build anything. So I asked some friends if they knew friends at companies like BuzzFeed and Mashable, and would they take my CV? I made my resume into an infographic on the subway. I pitched to lots of companies my ideas. And for the first time in a long time, I committed myself to a mission. It's like I used that desire for roots as a rubber band to tie in all of that chaos energy and focus it like a beam on one thing. I told the universe that wherever I got the job, I would commit to that life. I would commit to that city. And then I told everyone around me that I got the job at Mashable and I was moving to New York. Secretly, I was hoping that I would get the job at BuzzFeed and stay in Los Angeles. I know it sounds conflicting, but I did. And then it happened. It was an offer from BuzzFeed, a chance to start a new life in Los Angeles. Let me say, 2015 BuzzFeed felt like if high school was just filled with geeks and nerds and awkward art kids. We all had initiatives. We all had the creativity to make those initiatives into viral content. And it was like the most fun place to work ever. I had structure, like a 9 to 6 in my life for the first time. I didn't have to work several jobs, and I didn't have to work through the weekends. I had a lot of space in my life for the first time to figure out who I was. And this space, I think, was the jumpstart to the healing that I needed. Space in my relationship, space to be creative, space to be me. And speaking of space, around this time, I started sharing my space, my apartment, with my best friend from childhood. She's not my best friend. I hate categorizing friends as best friends, but she's definitely my closest friend. Y'all have met her before, Abby. Abby's a very special person in my life, and she's been through her own trauma and shit, and we were able to share space with each other. I finally felt like I had someone who I could share my truest self with. Someone who knew me since I was a baby, and also who didn't judge me or judge what I had been through. And that was so helpful. I probably wouldn't have been able to function if Abby didn't move in with me. I should tell her that.
I was talking about that in you and how like you made me feel really comfortable to come to the table with my full self. I don't think I would have healed the way I did if we didn't live together and if we didn't have each other and if you didn't move back to LA. And I realized in the video when I was shooting, I was like, I don't think I've ever said this to Abby. So I'm saying it now.
Well, you know I feel the same way.
Well, I know. And I love you.
I love you too.
And you know what? There were still bad times too, okay? It's not like I got the job and I got the guy and then my life was perfect. I still got panic attacks, I still got night terrors, and I was still sipping on that dumb bitch juice, if you know what I mean. I made stupid decisions like grabbing the mic at my first work outing and introducing myself publicly to everyone. I had to evict a weird roommate. I've yelled at way too many meter maids to count. I still really didn't understand my emotions and why they would swell so much and overtake me. I got into standoff fights with the other girls at Lytle. I had a panic attack on set once and it almost cost us a video that we were working on. I worked hard, but I also played hard. It felt like all this space that I had finally gotten for myself helped me develop some kind of equilibrium, some kind of balance. 2019 was a really, really hard year for me, for reasons that I don't really want to get into right now, but I will say I didn't react in the same way. I didn't burn it all down and run to New York. I looked my fucking mistakes in the eye and I took accountability. I sat down, I felt the pain, I meditated through the panic. And y'all, it was only when I started taking accountability for my behaviors that I discovered that I still needed more help. So I got it for myself. I started DBT group therapy. Now, DBT is a special kind of therapy. It's called dialectical behavioral therapy. It was developed for folks with borderline personality disorder, but you don't have to have BPD to benefit from it. I don't have borderline personality disorder, but I personally got so much from it. I can make another video specifically about DBT if y'all want me to, because honestly, I've never been in a program before that gave me so many concrete results. And I was only in that program for about 18 months. In October of 2019, I started Lexapro, and I haven't had a panic attack since. Well, actually, that's not true. I had a big old panic attack when BuzzFeed dissolved the Ladylike channel after we all left. Did I say that out loud? Oopsie poopsie. But thankfully, I didn't self-destruct. Messy Devin still very much lives here, but she's more of a side character now. She's kind of been replaced by Devin, but better. Or Devin, that bitch. Okay, so why did I make this video into like an autobiography of Devin? Like, why? Because every day since I made that video at BuzzFeed with Chantel, I get a fresh batch of new DMs in my inbox of people asking me how I do it, how I did it, how I was able to put the pieces back together after someone stole my autonomy. And this question used to freak me out a lot, and it kind of still does. Because I'm just one woman. I'm a white, upper middle class, college educated woman. There's so many women who don't look like me, who also don't get the benefit of having space from their Georges. There are so many men out there who are too ashamed to come forward and talk about what happened to them. Also, I heard a startling fact that 20% of the trans community has had something like this happen to them. 20%, that's 1 in 5. That's insane. I simply cannot have all of the answers for everyone. But what I can do is lay it all out, most of it out on the table to show you how I did it. For me, I was a mess for several years afterwards. I coped by always moving, never stopping. But then I learned to slow down. I learned to accept that what had happened to me was a part of my history and that it doesn't define me. We don't talk about what life looks like after rape, so I just thought that I would start the conversation. It is April, after all, which is my least favorite month for many reasons. Ironically, it also happens to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, last month, George reached out to me on LinkedIn. It was just a friend request, and it was probably a mistake. This would have completely derailed me for probably weeks 4 years ago. I would have probably reacted with a lot of sex and a lot of drugs 6 years ago.
I just feel really angry right now. And I'm trying to think of things I can do with that anger. And the first thing that came to mind was like, I should churn butter.
Instead, I got really sad and thought about the absence of instruction for people like me at times like this. So I turned on my camera and I vlogged. I really wasn't planning on making this video. Like I said, I only realized that Easter 2012 was 9 years ago today, recently. Before I bounce, I want to share with you a quick story. I spoke with a woman recently who shared with me that she had been assaulted by her family doctor over 40 years ago. And what I noticed about her is she was still very angry about it. I mean, like her emotion radiated off of her when she told me. And for the first time, I felt really seen. I know that sounds weird, but her anger made me feel really represented. Because I don't know if we ever get rid of that anger or that chaos or that messiness. I think we just learn to use it for a benefit. Anyways, I really hope this video helps you. If you need it, I love you, you beautiful nerds. Thank you for sticking around hearing my story. And I promise we'll have a cuter video next week. I'll see you then.